Red and blue lights flashed frantically in the rearview mirror. The sirens blared. Sweat poured down my face as I pushed my foot down on the gas as hard as I could, trying desperately to get the van moving faster. I knew the engine wouldn't take it forever, though. The rain was bashing the windshield, and I could barely see the road in the dark. The faint image of trees swept past on either side, like an impressionist painting. I considered just stopping and turning myself over to the police. They'd probably catch me anyway. But no, I couldn't do that, I told myself. My employers would find me, and they would kill me. My cargo was too precious to them. If I lost it, I was a dead man. I didn't look back at the metal case strapped down in the rear of the van, but I could feel its presence. I didn't know what it was, but people had died stealing it. It was very important to someone. As the road sloped upward, I felt the van decelerate. "No, you piece of junk, move!" I yelled. The police cars were catching up, and then the trees disappeared. I was on a bridge. What bridge? Was there a bridge close to the drop-off point? Couldn't remember, but I hoped so. I again gave the van as much gas as I could. I had to lose those cops. Whatever I did, I had to lose them. But then, I suddenly lost all control of the van. I'd hit water. I was hydroplaning. No, 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 no. The van veered sideways, and I yelled in fear as it smashed through the guardrail on the bridge. The jolt shook the breath out of me, and the airbag exploded into my face as glass shattered and metal creaked. And then I was weightless. It seemed an eternity, and I wondered if I was dead. No, I wasn't dead, but I was sure I was about to be. The van hit the water, and it came flooding in through the broken windows. This was it. I was going to drown. I was dazed, but the adrenaline running through me allowed me to push the airbag out of my face and try to breathe. The water had nearly filled the whole van as I fumbled with my seatbelt. I had seconds of air left. I had to get out of the van. I just had to get my finger on that button. There! Finally! I unlatched the belt, and without a second's notice, I pushed myself out of the van as water filled it entirely. I swam upward as quickly as I could and surfaced. The intense rain pelted me as I treaded water, and I took a deep breath of fresh air. I soon realized, though, that I could see nothing but black water and rain in any direction. I couldn't even see the bridge the van had fallen from. I could still hear the police siren somewhere in the distance, though. I was happy to be alive, but still, I knew that I would be dead if I didn't find the shore and do it quick. I turned back and forth in the water, trying to figure out where the police sirens were coming from. Maybe I could find out where land was if I could just figure that out. But in the rain and wind, the siren sounds seemed to come from every direction, and they sounded even further away now than before. Suddenly, a huge bubble of air surfaced, making the water around me look like it was boiling for a moment. What had that been? The last of the air escaping the van? Escaping the van. Escaping the van. My mind went to the metal box in the back. Had it ruptured? I remembered where it had come from, and that thought sent a shiver down my spine, stronger than the shivering I was already doing in the chilly water. I hoped to God that box was still intact. I didn't know exactly what was in it, but nothing coming out of the Willow Foundation laboratory could be any good. I had to find the shore. I had to get out of the water. So, without another moment's thought, I picked a direction at random and started swimming. The lake couldn't be that big. I soon found out that the lake could, in fact, be that big, and after swimming as hard as I could for a couple of minutes, I was still surrounded by dark water and rain. The police sirens were inaudible too. I had probably drifted a long way from them. It was hopeless. I was going to drown, or worse. That was the long and short of it. I said a silent prayer to any god that would listen. And then I saw something in the distance. Was it a log or a piece of driftwood? I swam toward it, squinting at it hopefully. When at last I was close enough to see what it was, I yelled out, "Help!" as loud as I could. It was a boat, and there seemed to be someone in it. "Help me!" I cried again. The person in the boat perked up and started moving, bending over the side, maybe to paddle it toward me. I swam faster, using the last of what strength I had, and finally found myself only a couple of yards from the boat. The man paddled faster, and when we were close enough together, he hauled me up out of the water and into the craft. "Are you all right?" he asked above the sound of the wind and rain. "I'm okay," I replied weakly. The man, middle-aged and sporting a thick beard, didn't say another word, and instead furiously scooped water up in a jacket he tied into a sort of bowl and dumped it over the edge of the boat. After a few seconds, he yelled, "I got caught in the storm. I can't find the shore." "Is this a lake?" I asked. "Yeah," came his reply as he continued to scoop water out of the boat. "Tie up your jacket and help me," he commanded. The boat was filling with rainwater, so I quickly took off my jacket and did as he said. I was startled by a loud splash in the water near us a few seconds later. I turned quickly toward it, but I could see nothing, of course. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "It was a fish," he replied. We both went back to getting water out of the boat, and continued until we heard it again, this time closer. "Help! Help me!" someone yelled out in the darkness. We both stopped our work and listened. I had been calming down slightly now that I was in a boat, but my heart started racing again. Someone else was stranded out there in the lake. "Help!" came the cry again. I looked at the other man in the boat, and we silently resolved to help whoever it was. We quickly leaned over the sides and started paddling toward the last place we had heard the call. "Help me!" We changed directions as we heard it again, and there, a few yards in front of us, was the faint image of a person flailing around in the water. "We're coming!" I yelled, and I paddled faster. We were getting close to the man when I slowed down my paddling and then stopped completely. "What are you doing?" asked the other man in the boat. I just pointed forward toward the spot where we had last seen the flailing person. They were gone. My boat partner sat up straight and took a quick look around. "Where'd he go?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied, straining my eyes as I searched the darkness. The boat was again filling with water, so we stopped our search short and went back to dumping load after load of it overboard. It went on like that for a few more minutes, and I wondered if the torrential rain would ever let up. I was so cold, soaked to the bone, my feet constantly submerged in a few inches of liquid. Finally, I struck up a conversation with the other man in the boat. "What's your name, by the way?" I asked. "Marshall," he replied, not looking up from his work. "Mine's Tony," I replied. That wasn't true, but I couldn't take the chance of Marshall IDing me if the police talked to him after, if we ever made it out of the lake. "How'd you get out here?" Marshall asked me. "I was, swimming when the storm hit," I replied. "You were out there a while then. I'm surprised you—" Splash! The sound came from just behind the boat, and we both heard a voice yell, "Help! I can't find the shore!" The words were muffled by water, though. It sounded like whoever it was drowning. "We're here!" I yelled. "Where are you?" "I don't know," the voice yelled back. The sound was closer than it had been a moment before, but I still couldn't see anyone in any direction. There! There was the flailing person in the water again, off to the left of the boat. "There he is," I told Marshall, and we both started paddling again. "We're right here," I shouted. "Follow the sound of my voice." That seemed to have some effect on the person in the water, and they swam slowly toward us, still flailing around more than anything. We were making steady progress, though, and when we finally came up alongside the man in the water, Marshall reached over to the side of the boat and took his hand, hauling him up so that he was hanging over the edge. He didn't let go of Marshall's hand, or try to get into the boat, though. He just hung there, breathing heavily. He was young, about my age, but he had a thick beard, almost as thick as Marshall's. "You okay?" I asked him. He looked up at me and said, "Yeah." But the way he said it was almost robotic, like he wasn't really sure what he was saying. "Come on, get in the boat already," said Marshall, as he tried to pull the young man in by the hand he was still grasping. The young man resisted the attempt to pull him into the boat, however, and instead turned from looking at me and stared at the man holding his hand. A single word escaped his lips. "Marshall," he said, and with that, He let himself fall back into the water, yanking Marshall along with him. I didn't know how to react. They were both gone beneath the waves in less than a second. What had just happened? "Marshall?" I called, splashing my hand around in the water. No one resurfaced, and the only sounds I heard were the continuing howl of the wind and rain splashing into the lake in every direction. I was dumbstruck, and suddenly felt very scared and alone. "Marshall!" I called again. I received no reply. I then realized the boat was filling with water again, and I quickly scooped as much of it out as I could, still scanning the waves for any movement. I started shaking. I had to get out of the lake. I had to. Marshall was a goner. I had to get out. I started frantically paddling, but stopped short when I heard a voice somewhere in the darkness. "Follow the sound of my voice," it called. I still didn't see anyone anywhere, but I called out, "Where are you?" In reply, "We're right here," the voice in the dark water yelled. "I can't see you," I replied, as I turned my head around and around looking for them. "We're coming," came another shout. Finally, I saw them. 2 people bobbing up and down in the waves a couple of yards away. But they weren't swimming or treading water. They were just bobbing up and down like buoys. When they made eye contact with me, though, they started splashing around furiously, and one of them called, "Tony, we're right here!" I wanted to paddle toward them, but something about the way they had just been floating lifelessly a moment before scared me, and I stayed where I was. They were swimming toward me, and would reach me in no time, though. Alarm bells were ringing in my brain, and I didn't know why. They were getting much closer as I decided to paddle away from them. Something was wrong. I had gotten a little further away when they suddenly stopped swimming, and instead began bobbing up and down again. That frightened me, and I stopped paddling, just watching them. It was then that the unthinkable happened. They both rose out of the water and up into the darkness and rain. A thick pillar of dark flesh, like a massive tentacle, rose up out of the water, attached to them somewhere on their backs. My mouth dropped open, and I fell backward in the boat, staring up at what I could see of the terrifying sight. Soon, more of these bodies on the ends of tentacles joined them in the air, and they all swung around wildly, maybe looking for me. I couldn't move. I was petrified, and the suspicion I had had earlier was confirmed. Whatever was in the box had escaped, and grown. "There he is," said one of the human puppets from atop its tentacle. It had seen me. All of the tentacles, 5, 6, maybe more, I couldn't tell, collapsed back into the lake, and then the only sights and sounds were the rain and the waves. I waited, unable to breathe, still lying on my back in my sinking boat. Many times that night, I had been afraid I was going to die, but it was there, in that moment, that I really knew. This was the end. Whatever the thing or things in the water were, they were going to grab me like they'd grabbed Marshall, and then I would be dead. I closed my eyes and accepted my fate. At least the nightmare would be over. The boat thumped against something and I opened my eyes, expecting to see them surrounding me, but they were nowhere to be seen. I sat up quickly, still fearful that they would grab me at any second, but nothing happened, and I turned around, surveying my surroundings. I couldn't believe my eyes. The boat had landed on the shore. I blinked for a moment, taking it all in, and then scrambled out of the boat and onto the gravelly beach. Not looking back, I crawled up the embankment toward the tree line that was just visible. When I made it there, I collapsed under the protection of a large tree and looked back toward the water. I could just make out the forms of several tentacles topped by human bodies, swaying in the wind, searching for me. I awoke sometime the next day. The rain had stopped, and the sun was shining. The lake was calm and still. I was groggy, but images flashed in my head from my nightmare. Surely it had been a nightmare. I looked out at the tranquil water and tried to imagine tentacles swaying in the wind. I couldn't. I must have dreamed that, The boat was just where I'd left it on the beach, but that made sense. Marshall had fallen overboard or something, and I had dreamed the rest. That had to be what had happened. I saw the bridge maybe a mile down the lake from where I was standing, the same one I had crashed off of. The police were probably sweeping the area for me. It was definitely time to leave. I turned from the lake and had taken one step away when I heard a voice behind me. It said, "Tony, are you all right?" I whipped around and was extremely relieved to see Marshall smiling at me from a couple of feet away. He'd lived. I stepped back toward him, and we shook hands as I said, "Yeah, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad we both made it out of there." "Yeah," he replied quietly. "We both made it out of there." He still hadn't let go of my hand. I was uncomfortable now. "Well, I've got to be going," I said, as I tried to free my hand from his grasp. Marshall replied, "Follow the sound of my voice." His grip on my hand became tighter. I stared into his face, trying to understand what he was saying. "What?" I asked him. "Let go of my hand." "What?" he replied. I yanked my hand away from him, but he still held onto it firmly. "Tony," he said, "we're right here. What are you doing?" I yelled, "Let go!" and struggled against his grip with everything in me. And then I finally looked behind him. A dark, scaly tentacle extended from his back all the way to the water. It glimmered in the sunlight and flexed in different places as he moved. Horrified, I looked back into his, or rather, its eyes, as it said, "How'd you get out of here?" Without another word, it pulled me by the hand, across the beach, into the water, and down into the depths of the lake.